night with the Ricky mentorship panel. And that's probably my favorite thing that we do for new attendees. And we even have some old timers that come because they like sitting in that room and listening to the panels. And honestly, I think people get jobs out of that.
Trendsetter, whoa, league of my own, it don't get better. No, read what I wrote, I'm a bestseller. Yeah, reach for my goals, hit it dead center, hit it dead center.
All right, well, welcome folks to the episode of Diggles Diamonds podcast. It's the most wonderful time of the year. You're probably thinking Christmas, but we're thinking a week ahead. We're talking about the ABCA Convention. And pleased to have with me today not only my esteemed co-host Dave Bentley, but also the college liaison for the ABCA, one Ryan Brownlee, who I have known for, 25 years now? Something like that?
Yeah, for sure.
Insane. So, Coach, let's talk a little bit about the convention. Obviously, it has evolved over the years. For someone who's going to the convention out in Maryland for the first time, out in Washington, D.C., what's your advice?
And I help with the high school youth and travel committees also.
Oh, I didn't. You
so
expanded
that
your
was my
portfolio.
original. That was my original. So I picked up some of the other ones too. So
Gotcha.
that was my original. Honestly, it just depends what level you're at. I think it kind of all morphs together, but I think it does really matter, especially Thursday. I think it really matters which level you're at. I think the cool thing for us is we have started to offer more and more things to everyone in the baseball
Absolutely.
industry.
Yeah,
when we started this thing a long time ago in 1945, I think it was 20 coaches that showed up in New York, and now, we're going to be pushing 6. We're always going to be pushing 6 or 7. Is probably what we're always going to be. And maybe certain years, if it's Nashville, we'll be more, but we're probably always going to be around 6 or 7 now, which is amazing to think for those of us that started going to the convention when we were kids and to look and see what it is now. But part of that is because we've added so many more things. If you look
100%.
at our growth has really come from the high school youth and travel coaches because we add more and more of those coaches every year. You're not going to add any more really college coaches like those numbers. You might get a few more here and there, but where we've really grown is on the youth and travel side. So with that, we have added more things. That Thursday, if you go to the ABCA app, if you're coming, go to the ABCA app, you can set your own agenda, and really pick things that are going to speak to you on what you want. I have a pretty heavy day on Thursday because it's a lot of meetings. We start breakfast at 7, and then we roll the rest of the day. And then I actually finish up at 9 o'clock at night with the Ricky mentorship panel. And that's probably my favorite thing that we do for new attendees. And we even have some old timers that come because they like sitting in that room and listening to the panels. And honestly, I think people get jobs out of that evening meeting
100%.
because if somebody's willing to stand up and ask a question and interact, it shows that they have some self-confidence, and we kind of use that as a training piece. But also, I think it allows people to not be as intimidated about the convention. I think we all, when we first started going to the convention, you see all these big-time coaches or you see a million people and you get intimidated. And I think it's a much better way for people to not be as intimidated on Thursday. And then Friday, obviously you get it cranked up. Exhibits start on Thursday. I don't think people realize how many people they know in the baseball industry until they come to our convention.
Oh, yeah. Never in a million years. I mean, and I tell folks that all the time, like, Steve Holm, at ISU, when he was out at Sacramento State, like we had talked all the time via the phone.
Yeah.
And yet when he takes the job at ISU, walk up behind the backstop, there he is. And, it's just like old times, hey, we've known each other for 10 years now, just because of ABCA. I mean, it's insane how much, you run across people there.
We've added an ops hot stove this year, so we have a really
Nice.
good panel of that was something we felt like we needed to address, is because we do have a lot of operations people that show up. And so I'm excited for that. It's not just the college ops people. That's going to be somebody that's trying to run their organization. And then we're adding a youth and travel hot stove Saturday. As soon as the youth stage gets finished on Saturday, we're rolling right into a 2-hour youth and travel hot stove that Jordan Baltimore, who runs New York Empire, has put together 4 really cool different panels for 25
Nice.
minutes. So it's going to be a little bit of coaching, a little bit how to run a facility. So again, that's because we've grown so much on that side. We felt like we needed to address that too for the people that show up.
And I think that's one of the biggest things, especially for someone, Dave, like you, to be able to go to an event like this and ask questions. I mean, Dave, as a parent, what does that do for you to be able to just kind of a one-stop shop?
Yeah, Ryan, I was planning on attending, and then I've got 3 kids under 10, and it just didn't work out. What I am going to do is attend with the live video stream.
Yes.
And I already highlighted the youth and travel hot stove, the rookie coaches mentorship panel, and then I'm going to do the pitching panel. Just a question, when I'm logged on to that, is it better for me to wait till the convention's over and then play back the recorded spots that I want to pick out? Or
I would interact with it as you go.
Okay.
That's the thing. We don't normally, we try to keep things something specific for the convention. And I think the hot stoves is where we still make it okay. It's an on-site thing. And so I know Kohan Content I think they're going to film a little bit of that stuff, but not all of it. But those won't come out till later. So really, it's just going to be the youth stage or the main stage speakers. And then the Q&As are filmed also. So even though you can't be there, it still feels like you are there.
Yeah.
A little bit. We do have coaches and coaching staffs that will get together virtually. And that was the benefit of COVID. COVID was a bad time for a lot of people, but that was one of the benefits of COVID for us because we were forced to do a virtual convention. And so it actually showed us that, okay, we can kind of pull this part of it off too. So even if people can't get there, it's still a way to interact. And then the signing out portion, you get those videos earlier. That's a benefit of signing up for the convention, even if it's virtually, because as soon as all of our videos are done, you get those before everybody else gets them.
Got it.
Beautiful.
I mean, Dave, what'd you think of the Barnstormers?
I loved it.
I mean, those are my babies, but that still reminds me a little bit of the old days, the hands-on part of it.
I really liked it. And I think Northern and Diggle and I have talked about this, they're really coming up. I think Copeland's doing a great job. They've got 2 assistants from the central Illinois area where Diggle and I are from that Diggle knows pretty well. Their hitting coach, Stewart, is also a coach at Athletes HQ in Elgin, where my son plays. So he was literally soft tossing to my son like 2 weeks ago. And, I'll eventually introduce myself. But I thought it was great. I love those. I'm going to try to go to as much as I can that are within driving distance.
And for me, that's another thing. It makes people less intimidating. Those are hands-on. I am very partial to the baseball community because I grew up around it and I've been around it. And so I know how that is, but it's open access to anybody in our industry, honestly. If you're willing to invest the time to reach out to someone, they will get back to you at some point. They will. They're not
Guaranteed.
one person. I interviewed Coach Schlossnagel for the podcast. It comes out on Monday. But you can go down the laundry list of people over the years that you've interacted with that it's just a matter of reaching out to them. And so I always get back with people. That's part of my job is coaching outreach. So I try to do a good job of interacting with everybody. And that's the thing that I love the most about my job now is I feel like I'm interacting with everyone in the baseball industry from the top on down. And Slots made a good point. He goes, I talked about trickle down with some of the D1 rules that are coming out now. And he goes, I don't like that term. He goes, it trickles across. It does, which is cool. Because I think that's a great point. It's like, okay, everybody feels like they're kind of on the same trajectory and same path where it's not this group's up here on down. And honestly, our most important coaches are our youth and travel coaches. One of the things we try to address is the drop off. I think we're all trying to fix that drop off that we have when they get to 13 and 14, when they get to the big field. Will we ever get it fixed? I don't know, but I think there's some ways and some things that we can do to maybe make it a better experience for kids once they get to the big field.
What I noticed right now is that age, even before 14, more like 9 to 13, that's the age I'm coaching. And my number one priority is just help fan the flame of the love of baseball for these kids. Of course, we want to teach them the right way to do things, skills, fix a bad swing if possible, fix a glitch. But I want them at the end of the season to say, I can't wait for next year.
We do a youth summit, and it's grown the last 3 years. Rob Haney runs our youth committee. He's out of Northern Virginia, but he's done a really good job. And I think the things that we're trying to help, especially with your first-time coaches, moms and dads are trying to do that for the first time, is you don't really have to know much about baseball. You just have to provide an experience. Like, you're a facilitator, so you're just facilitating an experience for the kids that show up. Make sure they have a good time. We are starting to put more free youth content out for people to help. I think there's some really simple things from practice planning that they could do. And even if it was the same stuff over and over, if they microdose that approach and made it a good experience where kids are moving on. I still work youth camps here in North Carolina, and I like working with the 5 and 6-year-olds, but we spend 5 minutes on something and move on to something else. And I think that's where the practice planning piece comes in with the younger kids, especially, is spend a limited amount of time on something and then move on to something else.
Yeah, their short-term attention span is
that's where their brain development's at, and that's where you have to understand where their brain development is at. They can't stay with you for a long period of time, but you can keep them moving, and they will have a good experience. Those camps that we run are fun for kids because we're hopping, we're doing something, we're moving on to something else, and you can get a lot done in a short amount of time with the little guys.
What I tried to do at the end of each of our practices, either we'd play home run derby where I'd move home plate almost in the outfield, or we'd play dodgeball with like safe squishy balls. And they don't even realize with dodgeball, they're working on accuracy, cutting it loose. But it ends the practice with a big smile on their face.
Diggs, what else about the convention you want to know about?
Well, I was just going to say, you mentioned Schloss saying it trickles across, and I think that's such a great thing.
Yeah.
And I obviously have no basis for comparison, going to, I know basketball does their big convention at the Final Four, and I don't know where the Football Coaches Association does theirs. I'm sure it's somewhere around this time as well. But it seems like when you're at ABCA, just like you said, there's no hierarchy. It's, whether it's you jumping on this podcast or somebody being able to, I walked up to Matt Deggs 5 years ago in Indianapolis and literally bought him a coffee and sat down and talked with him, and then watched everybody just flock to his after talk in the Q&A room.
You look at some of the other conventions now, it hasn't been good for them with the transfer portal stuff. So I know their attendance for basketball and football has hurt a little bit because coaches are trying to fill their rosters out now. It's crazy on that part of it. But
that would be the one thing I would
that's another
folks.
Story for a different day's NCAA.
Well, we're going to have one of those questions for you here in a minute, but
okay, that's fine. But, I have my thoughts on all this. But they've done a little bit to themselves too.
True. As someone who has been that Division I head coach, how is the best way to approach you at the convention? Whether it's Ryan Brownlee now or Ryan Brownlee, 5 years ago when he was the head coach at Western Illinois. And
I would have a question. Have one question in the queue for somebody. People like to talk. Like, that's a thing. Like, people like to talk, and they like to talk about themselves. So if you can have a specific question for somebody in the queue, that's how Schloss and I started interacting. He spoke in Anaheim one year. He was at TCU. And so he brought up some really good fundraising stories on stage. And so I think it was the first year of Q&As. I actually went to his Q&A afterwards, and I was just peppering him with fundraising questions. Nice. So I got his contact after that, and then I started to reach out to him after that on questions. But I think that's always a good place to start with people, is have a specific question for them that you feel like they can answer.
Very cool. Very cool. Anything, anybody that you yourself are looking forward to at this go round?
I mean, I put the youth stage speakers together, so I'm pretty much there. I don't interact a whole lot with the main stage guys main stage coaches other than Sunday, because I don't have a whole lot going on Sunday other than packing everything up to send back.
Right.
I am partial to the youth stage speakers because I think it's a very diverse group.
Yeah.
And they always come up with great topics. So I think you get a little bit of everything down there.
Nice. Dave, you got any more convention questions for Coach Brownlee?
I mean, I'm excited to hear Tony Vitello. I think Clint Hurdle's another guy I want to listen to. I kind of put a star next to those two names. Is there anybody in Diggle? You kind of touched on this, but
Chuck
Ryan,
Wolf's going to be good too. Chuck was on the podcast with
Okay.
me. He's on the main stage. He's got a lot of really good research with lower half extremities and how they affect arm issues.
Okay.
Love it.
And he
I would
just
also-
spoke at Wake. He just spoke at Wake last weekend. And Dr. Kristen Nicholson, she runs the Wake pitching lab. She's doing some ball modification research for us right now. And she did mention him. And then Matt Swope, like, people are still trying to figure out what motor preferences is. And because that's kind of the next shiny thing in player development is motor preferences that Matt Swope from Maryland has put together. So he's going to dive in a little bit more in depth on that. He's been really active. I like Coach Swope a lot. And because it's their hometown, basically, they're doing a lot for the convention this year. The University of Maryland is. And their strength coach is on the strength and conditioning hot stove with us too.
Okay.
And I would tell everybody, don't sleep on my guy, Skylar Mead.
Yeah, he's always great.
One of the best young coaches in the country. I can virtually
He's not young anymore.
Well, I met him when he
He's
was
not
fresh
young.
out.
He's not young anymore. None of us are young anymore.
34 now?
Oh,
I mean,
he's getting up there now.
34 is young to me, but
yeah. But anyway, Skylar is one of the best. I have no doubt you'll see him at a Power Four conference one day and competing for College World Series berths. But that's just my opinion. We do want to talk a little bit about kind of the state of the game, Coach. You alluded to the transfer portal. We don't have to get into that. We know that's just a giant show. But what about this recent ruling out of Tennessee with Vanderbilt quarterback Diego Pavia and potentially just throwing a wrench into all things eligibility? Or are you hearing anything from the membership on that?
It just came out.
Yeah.
Actually, is it Sportico? Sportico came out with a really good article. So if anybody wants to dive into that part, because I thought the judge's clarification on that was correct.
Yeah.
I think I go maybe the other way. I don't think it's a bad thing, honestly.
Yeah.
Because they are two different entities. I mean, if you look at the NJCAA and the NCAA, they are two different entities. And the way the judge explained it did make sense. Like, you shouldn't hinder someone's ability. Now, if athletes are getting paid, which they are, you shouldn't be able to hinder their ability to make 4 years worth of money because they went to a junior college first, which that part of it to me makes sense.
Absolutely.
A kid shouldn't get, or guy or girl shouldn't be discounted and lose 2 years at a 4-year school now because they are getting paid. You know,
Right.
in the past, if they weren't, that's a different deal. But now, because I don't know Vandy's, I don't know Vandy. I said this, that's the other interesting thing with our convention is this all started on a legislation piece. So those Thursday night meetings, Division I coaches get together and hash out what they're going to. Division II has some really cool legislation they're trying to get on the books, which 18 hours in the fall and then 52 games in the spring. And so those Thursday night meetings are important for the coaches that come to get together because it does get a lot of things resolved. And I think about the old days when we were trying to get a transfer rule put in, we were trying to get a roster cap put in, we're trying to get 25% rule put in, we're trying to get a common starting date put in for Division I. All those things were impactful for Division I baseball. And so I think that's something people from the outside looking in don't understand, that the convention's an important part for coaches to get together and get new legislation on the books too.
Absolutely.
I don't know, man. Like I always see both sides of it. You know me, Ben. You know I ride in the middle on a lot of that. I do.
You do.
I always try to give people grace.
Yeah.
I do. I really try to give people grace because you're not in someone's shoes.
Right.
I do know if I'm Vandy's quarterback and I'm probably not an NFL quarterback, this is my one opportunity to get some money out of this thing before I have to go to the real world.
Life-changing money.
But yeah, to get some money out of this thing before I have to go to the real world, which I think all of us would try to do that.
Absolutely. If I can come out of Vanderbilt with $700,000 in my pocket and buy a house and
For sure,
settle. Yeah, absolutely. And one of the other things that I've always appreciated about you and tried to mimic or follow in your footsteps, you mentioned giving grace, but you have this exceptional way of explaining what kids should be looking for in the recruiting process. And I was just wondering if you had a couple minutes to kind of tell us, hey, you're a 2026 or 2027 kid. What, in your opinion, are the best ways to be handling your recruiting process right now?
And 2019 was my last spring, and things have changed so much then. If you think about that, that was the year before COVID.
Yeah.
And my last spring coaching was a spring before COVID. So for me personally, I probably got out at the right time because those guys are dealing with so much stuff. I think the hard part for Division I coaches is the unknowing until they get more clarification. I still have my issues with the NCAA where you can't blanket legislate to every sport. Like you just can't.
Yeah.
Everybody's timeline is different. Baseball is so different because of the draft than all the other sports, and where the draft is for baseball, it's so different. So I just think it's impossible to blanket legislate to everybody. And if I had kids coming out now, it's still always about finding the right fit, but I think that fit has changed immensely for kids now, for high school kids. I think that what the fit in the immediate may not be the fit where it is 4 or 5 years from now. And so I think you really do have to take it as a year by year, case by case basis for individuals. It's hard to sit here, but I've always said that.
Yes.
The social comparison piece is very difficult for people to wrap their heads around. And social media has not helped with that. Anything that's readily available online has not helped with that because everybody thinks, well, it worked for that person. It's going to work the exact same way for me. And that's not how life works.
Right.
It's just not how it works. So you have to really focus on yourself and your own path and not worry about what else is going on. And it is hard to take advice from people because, like I said, they're not in your shoes. Everybody would like to think, well, do this, this, and this, and then this is going to happen. And I think as we've seen here over the last 3 years, that's not the case anymore. So it still boils down to relationships. So hopefully, if a coach is investing time in you, I think that counts still.
Okay.
And that's where you have to trust. That's where you have to trust your interactions, their interactions with the coaches individually. And I see every level of college, their championships. There is not a lot of difference between the teams that make it to Omaha, the teams that make it to Lewiston, Idaho, the teams that make it to Enid, Oklahoma, the teams that make it to Grand Junction, Colorado, Cary. I would highly recommend for any high school player and parent, if you have a championship close to you, go watch those last teams standing. And you'll be extremely surprised at how good the product is on the field. And I think this is the golden era for college baseball at every level because of how good the talent is on the field at all levels. And so I said that in the office. If I was coming out of high school right now, there's a distinct possibility that I end up at a junior college if I wanted to play baseball because I was 5'9", 140 pounds coming out of high school, and you're not going to see that on a Division I field right now. You're just not.
Yeah.
You will not see that.
I fully agree. I fully agree. I keep wondering if it's time to jump back into the JUCO ranks myself, but we'll see. But
I just think it affords you the opportunity to keep your timeline going. And then if you're good enough, you're good enough. Like people don't always like hearing that either. You got to be good enough too.
True story.
So therein is the question: how much is getting on the field important to you? Is it getting on the field early important to you? Are you going to bide your time and develop? But you're going to have to compete at every level. And for me, that's the easy way out. This is supposed to be hard. I said this on the Blueprint podcast. Whether it's coaching or playing baseball, the journey is set up to be difficult to see who actually wants it and who wants to make it and who wants to make the sacrifice to make it. It is set up that way. And that's the beauty of baseball, whether it's coaching or playing, is that it's supposed to be difficult. And I think we have a terrible narrative in society now that we're telling kids that things are supposed to be easy. They're not supposed to be easy. It's supposed to be difficult. It's built that way to see who actually wants to stick it out and make it.
I always fall back on the old Jimmy Dugan quote from League of Their Own. It's supposed to be hard. The hard is what makes it
Yes,
great.
that's the beautiful part of it. That's the great thing about baseball.
Well, Dave, that's all I've got. You got anything else for Coach Brownlee?
Yeah, just one question, Ryan. When you were head skipper at Western Illinois, ABCA invited you to speak at the convention, and you talked about time management plan or program that you had developed at Iowa. That's something I, as a player in college, struggled with. Managing time for grades, baseball, having fun. Can you just touch on a few of those key points? I know it was a long time ago, but that really
It's 2012. So that's one of the benefits of speaking at our convention is I don't know if I get the Western job if I didn't get up there and speak in 2012. I think it's a great way to showcase who you are. And it's really hard to get up on stage. It is.
Yeah.
That's not an easy thing to do. I tell our youth stage speakers that I send them audios to listen to. Time management was always something that I think I was good at, and separating. And it is a discipline thing, but when I got to JMU, our grades were not good. We had had a lot of issues off the field with our guys before I got there. So that was one of the first, and these are handwritten like calendars. I gave them the JMU calendar that you got at the bookstore. So these were handwritten. That's how much technology changed. And then when I got to Iowa, we created that Excel spreadsheet. Damon Davis is the strength coach for Auburn basketball, but he was a strength coach at Iowa when I got there. So we kind of put that together with our academic advisor, Troy Wolf, who had played baseball at Iowa. And the same thing when I got to Iowa, their grades were not good. Like their time management, discipline, none of that stuff was good. And the numbers proved out from a graduation rate, retention, staying eligible, all those things proved out. And I thought it was something that not a lot of people had really talked about. I think coaches were doing it, but nobody had really gotten on stage and said, hey, here's how you implement all this. And part of that is the 10 rules of recovery, which is a checklist that I still use personally, where it was 10 things that we felt like if they could check those 10 things off every day, 8 hours of sleep, drink enough water, protein with every meal. It's simple things, but I think players need to see those written out. And if anybody's motivated at all, they're going to want to be able to check things off. I think it keeps them motivated, but it also shows that, okay, not that you're going to be perfect every day and you're going to get all 10 in, but if you could get 8, 9, then you're on the right path. And then some days you might get 10 in. But it was also a log and a track for them for the entire year. So if they had a great week, some of it was self-evaluation. How's your week? What are your challenges this week? What's positive about this week? Where they could go back and say, okay, the middle of October, things were great. I was going great. Now I'm starting to slide a little bit here. I don't feel as good. What do I need to do to go back and get back on that path? But this is also where you have to give yourself some grace too. I think people are too hard on themselves when they're not always doing things correctly. And I think you have to give yourself some grace and just move on. Like forgive yourself. If you screw up, everybody screws up. That's part of the human journey. Everybody's going to make mistakes and screw up. Forgive yourself and move on. I think people are unrealistic at times with their path, and just pull yourself back when you need to. But that's a self-discipline thing and self-management. I said it the other day. I've never met a great leader who wasn't good at self-management. Never. People that can lead people, but that self-management comes from them. They're able to lead themselves first. And I think this works great in team settings. I think everybody focuses on trying to lead everybody else. You got to lead yourself first. Once you get that, then you can start helping people around you, but you have to lead and self-manage yourself first. But that was just something, I think if you're in coaching and you do care and love the people that you're around, you're going to do things for that, like time management. You're going to discuss that with them. You're going to go over 10 rules recovery with them if you actually care and love. And coaching is loving someone. And this is hard for this generation now because just because someone is being hard on you and coaching you, that means that they love you. if you're willing to take that next step with somebody and really try to push them to be the best version of themselves, that's love. That's love, because it's way easier just to leave people alone, be like, oh, do whatever you want. That's the easy way out. The hard part is, okay, this is probably what's best for you, and you need to get on board with this because you're going to be better off for it. I still send that out. I still send it out to former players.
I think it's important, very important topic.
I still send it out. I think that has to get in order for the on-field portion, and they can control that. Some of it's about getting small wins on your daily schedule. The 10 rules of recovery is very simple checklist, but those are wins. Everybody talks about making your bed or whatever you wanted that to be that day. Those were small wins. I completely agree with getting small wins the first things that you do when you get up. Do I always get up at 4:30 in the morning? No, but when I'm going good, I'm up at 4:30 in the morning. I'm meditating, I'm working out, but those are wins. Now, I don't do that every week because my schedule doesn't dictate I can do that. But when I am going good, as soon as my alarm goes off at 4:30 in the morning, I am up, wash my face, brush my teeth, sit down and meditate. Then I go work out. And usually I'm done by 5:30 or 6. And then I'm on to the day. But those are wins. I think you have to build those small wins. Whatever those look like for you individually, I think you have to build in those small wins throughout the day. But this isn't earth-shattering. It's exercise, nutrition, sleep, hydration. And if somebody can, if a college, high school, college player, professional player in any sport can get on those 4 things, the performance becomes easier. And then some sort of visualization. Those would be, and I talk about when I go on the high school clinic circuit, that's my best one, is the peak performance, the high performance one that I go over. Because those are simple things that you can do every day, but it doesn't mean they're easy. But I think it's about giving yourself small wins throughout the day. Makes it flow.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Well, Coach Brownlee, I can't thank you enough for jumping on with us.
Anytime.
I know you're a busy man. But good luck with the ABCA next week. I have no doubt it'll run like a watch with you there, and I'll talk to you after.
I'm riding coattails still. I'm riding coattails. I'm a small portion of this. Thank goodness for the other guys in the office.
Well,
I'm good at the things that I'm good at. They're good at all the other things, which I need people that are good at the things I'm not good at. I think that's a part of surrounding yourself with people too. Like, you need to surround yourself with people that are good at the things that you're not good at. It will make you look good.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, hey man, can't thank you enough. And I will, I'll be in touch after the convention, I'm sure.
Yep. Awesome.
Thanks, Coach.
Thanks.
Yep.
Love you,
Take
brother.
care.
Talk to you.
Yep.
See ya.
All right. Hopefully that was good enough.
That was perfect, man.
I go all over the map. So
I like it.
I wouldn't have expected anything else. So all right, man. Well, hey, we'll let you get to work.
All right. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.
Same to
Merry
you,
Christmas,
Ryan.
Ryan. See ya.
All right. Yep. Be safe.
You
Take
too.
care, boys.